Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to Copper Coins Part 3 or 4, Part 4. Sorry I was a little late today. I finally got my phone in, and it took a bit longer to load it, and then I needed to grab a shower. But I am here now. Anyway. This is a chill stream. What that means is I will be talking to myself. I will be talking to my lovely book garden. I might occasionally look something up or just take a pause and explain something. I know that's not everyone's thing, but it's a lot of fun. Maybe stick around and see. You might enjoy it. This is also a mature stream. So what that means is that it is 17 plus. So there may be violence, there may be very descriptive graphic horror, there may be triggering things that come up. For the people that are listening live, sometimes we get a little bit of a hint when something's going to happen. Sometimes it creeps up on us. So if things look like they're getting a little hairy and something that you think might, sometimes it creeps up on us. So if things look like they're getting a little hairy and something that you think might be a trigger is coming, absolutely, it is more than okay for you to sign off and come back later when there will be a potential trigger warning on the title. If something did come up that I believe should be marked, something in the description with a simplified explanation, as well as a timestamp marking where such a thing happened and a timestamp for when it ends. Be kind to yourself. As much as we love diving into these stories, a lot of Danmei has a lot of messed up things in them. So protect yourself and your mental well-being. We're all here for a good time. I am not sponsored. The only thing I do own is that physical copy over there and my time, and sometimes not even that. If I ever do get sponsored, you all will be the first to know. I am not fluent, but I do my best. You will see my not fluency come across probably in names and places, but I feel like I'm getting kind of better with it. Hello, Annika. Hello, Ruby. How are you both doing today? But yeah, if I am egregiously butchering something, please just let me know in the comments and I will do my best to fix it. Just be kind about it. I am trying my best. But yeah, so as I said before, I'm super excited. Finally got my new phone in, so now I can stop worrying that my other phone is going to die any second. Oh my gosh, it's really warm down here today. But yeah. So I'm super excited about that. I am a little afraid of this case because it's ridiculously airtight and like I don't know how I'm going to change this if I ever decide like I need to change stickers or add something, add a little keychain, cuz like it's its own process. Like it's going to be safe, but like it is tight. Like I'm doing good. Got home at 2 a.m. from the concert and took today off to recover and craft. That sounds awesome. And I'm glad you're doing good, Ruby. Oh yeah, my boy is very well protected, as well as Ayuan and tiny little like. Oh, also I found these cool things. They're little grippers. So it's not just the aesthetic. I think it's like called like Dragon Guard or Dragon Grip. But yes, the boys are very well protected. Speaking of the boys, I just found this gorgeous picture of Shenyuan. I don't know who drew it, but look at how gorgeous that is. I just saw it on former Twitter here. I think I still have it open. Let me see. Oh, this one. This one's so pretty. Look at this. Love it. Thank you, Truffle. It took most of the evening to get everything back the way I like it. I was smarter this time and used my old phone as like a layout preference. I can flash it again if you want to look at the artist. So this is Manon SVSS Reread. Yeah. I love anything with Bingzu. And I love that people are making more art with Bingzu. I absolutely love Lily of the Valleys. One, because they're an awesome flower, but also because I've actually grown up with lilies of the valleys in the garden. And if you didn't know, there's a very special way you actually pick lilies of the valleys, and it allows the plant to actually keep propagating. Um, and you have to go all the way down to the bottom of the stem, kind of almost into the leaves at the bottom, and you pull up gently, and it'll actually like pull up the rest of the flower, not the roots. And that is how you pick the flowers. And if you just break off the end of it, then it's done. Like it won't flower again for the year. But if you pull it out, it'll keep going and going and going. But yeah. It's I have a special love of SVS fandom, because it was actually one of the first ones that fully got me officially, like, first bound book officially that got me into Danmei. I mean, I was reading stuff on Wuxia, um, that hadn't been published. It was very rough translations. But, so it was the one that opened the door to this madness. My parents' Lily of the Valley is trying to take over the world. I mean, that's gotta smell amazing, Truffle. Yeah. Oh, I'd love that as a print. But anyway, does anyone have anything they're looking forward to this weekend? Um, I've got another kind of picnic thing that I'll be going to. I've got a comfy, like, spring dress coming, that I think should be arriving. That I'm excited for. Just kind of ate the side yard. Again, excited for. Just kind of ate the side yard. Again, your house or their house must smell amazing, though. Like, at least for a couple weeks. So this'll be my dress this weekend, if it fits. It's got pockets. And then, because I'm bougie like that and I need my accessories, we're gonna make this look so fancy with a belt. Ta-da! Okay, so you're bringing that up. You're vending at your local Pride Fest on Saturday. That'll be so much fun. Um, I think maybe tonight I'm gonna make this, but since we're like halfway point in this series, I kind of want to poll on if people want a longer series next time, so like 4+ books, or if we want to do another shorter series, which could be either like 1 book to 3 books. Thank you. I like, as case in point, I like simple dresses that I can like then dress up or pair up. Because my main priority is being comfy. But I think I'll make that post tonight and then give it some time to stew, and maybe by the time we're starting book 3, I'll kind of post up a list based on do we want short series or long series from there. But we shall see. Oh yeah, one last thing. I got this today and it's actually official. Shocker, it's my boy. But he's so cute. He's going to go on my keys. My already heavy key ring is going to thank me. Ta-da! I love the deadpan expression. Yeah, no, definitely. Beauty's Blade. I recently found one, and it's from a different publishing house. It's called... what's it called? It is called... I think it's like Legacy of the Dawn. Song of River's Heart. Oh, I love him so much. The deadpan cannot be bothered expression. My keyring literally is weaponized because I have a plastic. I call it my punch kitty. So it's kind of like a fake knuckles. But it looks like a cat face, so I can get it through airport security. Yes. I always love how such a simple expression can be so endearing. But yeah, so the description for Song of River's Heart, if anyone is interested, is it's tough being overworked all the time, but that has to be better than dying, right? After a bizarre accident, Feng Yan awakens in the mysterious fantasy world of the popular gacha game Peak Sword Story as the healer of the Jian Hua sect, Feng Ming Yuan. Guided by the enigmatic system and haunted by his disappointing life, he hopes he can surprise as the inconsequential background character to the hero's story. But as he navigates a realm recovering from a devastating demon war, he faces a deadly assassination plot from heaven and the haunting legacy of a vanished demon prince, not vanquished. As tension mounts and secrets unfold, Feng Ming Yuan struggles to accept the growing feelings he has for his favorite character, a man whose hold on his heart feels as if it inexplicably stretches across time. But hey, it's perfectly normal to be a little obsessed with Gotcha's handsome and mysterious lead character, isn't it? No, it does sound a lot like SVSS, but I think a bit shorter and more to the point. It sounds interesting. Yeah. Hi, Cookielicious, by the way. Yeah, it's an option. Okay, I think that's it. That's all I have that's new. I think I'm going to lower this a little so it'll actually focus in more on my face. There we go. Okay, let me write down the time and we will go ahead and get started. Oh my goodness, just finished this week the QJJ Volume 7 and I'm starting Guardian Volume 2. Stratagem of Fated Winds. Here, I'll write down the suggestions for the shorter ones. Is that a shorter one? That one's one of the ones that's still coming out, right? Is that one of mine? I think we could probably also read Demon Venerable. Okay. Stratagem of Fated Winds. Beauty's Blade. I think I might actually have Stratagem of Fated Winds. 1 second. Okay, Demon Venerable. Swallow Book. Yes, I did purchase Stratagem of Fated Winds. I haven't read it yet. So the description for that one is, they were meant to pacify the nation together. A warlord's son, scorned for his humble origins. A noble's heir, jaded by unearned thrones. When Sun Si and Shou Yu cross blades beneath the pear trees, time begins to bend. Then Sun Si dies. His spirit lingers, bound to a sword and a primus unkept. But Shou Yu is not yet finished. Not while memory burns brighter than the fires of red cliffs. As he shatters his soul to rewrite the fate that doomed them both, Sun Si, caught between regret and longing, reaches for him from the far shores of death. Amid the war-torn ruins of an alternate 2nd century China, grief unravels ambition, and love, in the end, redeems all. Quest of honor mine, but it's not published stateside, and no one could keep a straight face. Oh, that's pretty cool. Stratagem of Fated Winds is a real person fic based on real Chinese history figure. So kind of like Golden Terrace in that sense. Oh, it's the same characters as Twin Jades of Jiangdong. Very cool. Okay. So we have a couple. Swallow Book. Not sure what the Swallow Book. So that's definitely a good start. These are all shorter books, so this will be our short list for right now. I'll put it right here. And now we shall go back to copper coins. But yeah, Cookielicious, I don't think you were here when I said this. Tonight, or more like tomorrow, tomorrow morning, I'm going to make a poll. I don't know why I'm stuttering so much right now. I'm going to make a poll asking if people want another shorter series like the ones we recommended just now, where it's 1 to 3 books, or do we want to do a longer series next, because we're literally like right at the halfway point of this series, and it's coming up fast. It'll just be a couple more weeks, and I usually like to be a little more on the ball with it. Ballad of Painted Swallow. All right. Is that one complete? Just 1 book or 2? Ballad of Painted Swallow. Yeah. So right now it seems like people are pretty excited for some of the shorter series, which I'm totally down with. I'm more than happy to do kind of some of the short ones. Okay. Not complete. That's still okay. But yeah, 3 to 4 volumes. Do you know what volume it's on right now? I I don't think I have Ballad of Painted Swallow. Really? The author published it on AO3? Oh. Might have to look that up. Okay. That could be a potential future one then. Aw, man. I mean, understandable, but still, aw, man. But yeah. All right, should we get to our reading? Okay. So time. I need to write down the time. I'm all over the place tonight. All good, Cookielicious. I won't tell. Okay. 20:45. Love that we got some chatting tonight. Okay. So last time we were inside the very creepy we were saving Jiang Xining's sister from the bandits that we found out were just these homeless men that kidnapped her and her husband because they needed medical help and they didn't think they would get it. Well, they couldn't afford it, so they were like, we had to kidnap you, to which they basically responded like, did you even ask if we were like willing to find a way to work around it? You could have helped us in the shop. We could have made this work more peacefully. Which they all kind of responded like, well, yeah, I guess. We didn't think you'd be that sensible about it. Then things started getting spooky at the place they are staying. So after that, Xu Xian and Xuan Min show up alongside Uncle Chen, Aunt Chen, and Xingzi, who's got a crush on Xu Xian. Or no, Xu Xian. But yes. So then Jiang Xining meets up with his sister, and they have this absolutely gorgeous picture here where they're crying, and it's so sad. But yes. I was very relieved that Jiang Xining's sister was all right. I really appreciated how that whole situation turned out. So now they are at this house. And have been invited in by the master of the house, whose name? Lord Shu. He invited them in, and then the ghost troop that we met on the mountain arrived. And we shall see how that goes. So that's if I missed anything kind of that's relevant for now, we can continue it. But yeah, Danmei is tough on women sometimes. They're usually very harsh on women. But yes. However, joking aside, Jiang Xining was soft-hearted and couldn't really stand by and do. Hang on. Xu Xian, still scowling at the wall, snorted. I don't know how that bald donkey will treat you if you remove it. Oh yeah, he had Xuan Min put a talisman on Xu Xian and put him in the corner in timeout. So, Shushan, still scowling at the wall, snorted. I don't know how that bald donkey will treat you if you remove it, but if you just stand there watching and do nothing, I guarantee you'll regret it for the rest of your life, or afterlife, while clinging to my leg. This was the first time Jiang Xining and Fang Chen had encountered a kind person, or Shi Jing, so his sister, had encountered a kind person, or Shi Jing, so his sister, and Fang Chang had encountered a kind person with such a unique personality. Oh, if that's the case, I definitely won't remove it. After all, once it's gone, you'll be free to move, Jiang Xining said flatly. Bookworm, are you rebelling now, of all times? Joking aside, Jiang Xining was soft-hearted and couldn't really stand by and do nothing. He got his fill of the sight of the wise one being forced to behave, then reached out and grabbed the talisman on Shushian's forehead. However, in his carelessness, he used the hand that had been soaked by Jiang Shijing's tears. And Xuanmin's talismans were no ordinary talismans. They weren't easily removed. So as Jiang Xining gripped the talisman and pulled downward, his damp hand tore right off. Shushian stared. Jiang Xining stared. Neither of them moved. Ning, why are you just standing there motionless? Jiang Shijing asked. Jiang Xining immediately stiffened and forced his pained expression off his face. He turned around with a strained smile, hiding the broken hand behind his back. It's nothing. I just... Before he could finish his sentence, the door to the eastern room slammed open with a loud, unceremonious bang. Okay, so that is where we left off before. And yes, Jiang Xining is such a cinnamon roll. He gives such Wen Ning vibes, and I love him. Okay, let's go over our counts. Or I guess I should take the time before. 27. Okay, so our counts before we get started. Donkey count is sitting at a rather high 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 64. Our Jiang Xining suffering is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 22. That's sad. Wanted poster count is sitting at 5, 8. 8. Our face count is sitting at 12. Man, oh yeah, poor dude. Dying was just the start of his problems. Yeah, it really was. Alright, chapter 22, Chi Riding Array. The conversation inside the room was abruptly cut off by the sound of the door bursting open. Except for Shushian, who was stuck facing the wall, everyone else looked up in surprise at the large group of people pouring in. The leader, a tall and burly man with 3 long scars on his face, seemed more like a bandit than the beggars on the floor. It was the opera troupe. The last to enter was Xuanmin, who had gone out earlier. He closed the door behind him, keeping the benevolent Lord Shu and the other guests outside. The faint sounds of greetings and laughter from the hall drifted into the room, distant and surreal, as if muffled by layers of fog and the distance of several streets. An eerie chill descended on the room. Clearly, Xuanmin had led this group into the room because he had questions to ask. But before he could speak, the scar-faced man then fired off a rapid series of questions. Do you know where this is? How can you be so careless as to linger here? He eyed the clay pot surrounded by beggars and frowned. There are plenty of places to shelter from the wind and rain. There are so many abandoned temples around these days. You could have chosen any of them. Why pick this place? You're risking your lives. "Ah, we have the elderly and the sick. They're too ill to move, let alone climb the mountain," one of the beggars cried out helplessly. "Aren't you locals? Haven't you heard of one village?" The scar-faced man, though angry, kept his voice low. "Don't you know this place has been deserted for many years? There's not a single living soul in this area. How dare you stop here? And of all times, why now? Don't you get it? Not a single person out there is human." The irony right now is thick. Um sorry, one second. Okay. Jiang Xining and Lu Nianxi tried to keep their expressions neutral. Yep, they're calling it out too. This was basically a ghost warning them to. Only a few in the room were aware of that. The others were completely clueless and were quite taken aback by the scar-faced man's words. We know! Not only do we know, but we've also heard many rumors," one of the beggars replied. "Like how every year, at the end of winter, there are sounds here. Talking, coughing, even singing." The beggar paused mid-sentence when he noticed a man behind the scar-faced man holding several opera costumes and a long fake beard. "Opera singing," the beggar finished, his face turning pale. At the expression on everyone's faces, the scar-faced man shook his head. "We do perform the opera, but it's a different situation." He glanced at the wooden door as if looking through it at the people outside and sighed. "We're originally from this village. We grew up eating the rice and drinking the water here. The benevolent Lord Shu has been good to us. Without him, everyone in our troop would have passed long ago." "We wanted to repay his kindness for years, but he lacks for nothing except the opera that he loves. Our troop travels far and wide, making our home wherever we go, but every winter we return here on Lord Shu's birthday to perform and make him smile. It's a small gesture, but we've been doing it for 10 years now." 10 years! An older beggar interjected. "It's one thing to come and perform while he was alive, but why keep coming after his death?" "We promised," an elderly woman from the troop said with a gentle smile. "We promised back then. As long as he comes to listen, we'll perform. He's been here every year, so how could we not come? Could we not come?" When you think about the situation, that's rather tragic. They passed away coming to fulfill a promise to technically a dead man. "We're used to it and we did it willingly. But you're different. The people here don't know you and we don't know if you'll offend them. After all, there's a boundary between the living and the dead. If you offend them, it might cost you your lives," the scar-faced man said. "I'll try to talk to the benevolent Lord Shu later and explain that you're here by mistake and have other matters to attend to, so you can't stay. Hopefully, they'll let you leave." Xuanmin had been standing by the window and watching the outside through the torn paper while the scar-faced man spoke. When he was done, the monk frowned. "Wen village is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and wind gathers on one side. The bright earthbound spirits here. Not only one, but an entire village of earthbound spirits. Even if the entire village had become earthbound spirits, they should have dissipated within 2 or 3 years, given the village's condition. But now, neither the benevolent Lord Shu nor his neighbors showed any signs of fading. Instead, they seemed as lively as if they had just been rejuvenated. This could only mean one thing. Somewhere hidden had altered the feng shui array. Or no, something hidden had altered the shui array. Xuanmin's gaze flicked back to the back of Shushian's head before he turned to the scar-faced man. Since you were born here, do you ever notice anything strange in the village? They literally come back to visit a dead man on his birthday every year, and the dead man is actually there. Is there anything strange you notice about the village? You tell me. Man, Shushan and Xuanmin can't go a mile without bumping into an array. Yeah, I love the dedication. Before the man could answer, Xuanmin decided that Shushan should be the one to explain the specifics. Xuanmin walked to the corner, intending to temporarily remove the paper talisman from Shushan's forehead. But as soon as he lowered his gaze, he was met with the sight of Shushan's indifferent face. Not only did the evil spirit have a paper talisman on his forehead, but there was an extra hand stuck to it. Xuanmin had never seen anyone achieve such a feat while still in time out. I love that he calls it time out, too. Anyone achieve such a feat while still in time out. I love that he calls it time out, too. Like, that's totally what it is, but I love that he acknowledges that. The hand dangled from the talisman, having returned to its paper form after it came off. It fluttered with Shushian's exhalations, making the situation both amusing and frustrating. It was clear whose handiwork this was. Xuanmin glanced at Jiang Xining, who coughed. Oh, wait, I already marked that one. Still hiding his missing hand from his sister, he offered a dry smile. I was curious about the master's talisman, so I reached out to touch it. No one would believe this. Jiang Xining was known for being proper and respectful. Even if he were curious, he would rather die than remove the talisman without Xuanmin's permission. Moreover, he had seen Xuanmin's talismans many times along the way. What curiosity could he possibly have? Any fool could guess that Jiang Xining had been threatened or coaxed to act by Shu Xiang. Xuanmin didn't react much. He gently removed the paper-thin severed hand and nodded to Jiang Xining. Lift your wrist. Huh? Jiang Xining hesitated before he understood. He shifted to block his sister and brother-in-law's view and extended his severed wrist. He was distracted the entire time with fretting that his sister might see, so he didn't process what Xuanmin did to fix him. The mental image is so funny. Xuanmin put the dragon in a corner. Yeah, he did put the dragon in a corner. And then he kept the dragon in a corner, which is the more impressive part. He only felt a pressure around his wrist. When he looked down, his hand was reattached without a trace of injury, save for a faint bruise at the wrist. Jiang Xining had gotten off scot-free and reacquainted his hand. Reacquired his hand. The high monk was indeed a high monk. Thank you, Jiang Xining repeated as he wiggled his wrist. Next time. Xuanmin eyed Jiang Xining, who immediately shook his head and changed his tone. I mean, there won't be a next time. Where he belongs, right? Xuanmin responded indifferently, then turned back to the unfortunate Shushan. Stop looking at me like that. I've got a mouthful of pulmonary blood ready to spit in your face if you keep lording this over me like that, Shushan grumbled. He hated when his antics failed. Hearing Jiang Xining's groveling made him even more resentful. He felt like ripping off Xuanmin's head with his bare hands. Xuanmin had already reached for the talisman, but upon hearing this, he paused. Without a word, he turned and headed for the door. As he turned, the thin sleeve of his monk's robe fluttered into the air. Xian, who could only move his fingers, snatched the corner of the sleeve and tugged twice. He squinted, squared his shoulders, and reluctantly put aside his pride. Come back, don't leave. I'll refrain from spitting on you, okay? When Xuanmin turned back, he saw the evil spirit shiver and spit in the corner instead. I mean, ew, but okay. Sweet, sweet revenge for all those bald donkey remarks. The gall of Xuanmin to put the dragon on timeout. Xian met Xuanmin's gaze. He defended himself. What I spat out just now was the blood from my heart. Xuanmin blinked. It's all out now. Your face is safe. Xian felt like he was going to explode when Xuanmin didn't say anything, but he held back his temper after staring into Xuanmin's handsome face. Fine, I'll reason with you, he thought. After all, he was still under the talisman's control. He moved his fingers, tugging Xuanmin's sleeve to pull him closer. He wanted Xuanmin closer so he could speak in a low voice, making it less embarrassing if he had to humble himself. No one else would hear, and as for this bald donkey, Xian had already lost face in front of Xuanmin countless times, so he was beyond caring. Beyond caring, my butt. 65, I think. I'm gonna mark 50. Yep, 65. Face check. Okay. We are at 13 for face check. He was about to speak when Xuanmin changed his attitude as fast as a rat that had eaten poison. He removed the talisman without further ado, then spun Xian's wheelchair to face the others in the room. This deserted village might have what you're looking for. You should be the one to explain. Xian suppressed his confusion and spoke seriously to the scar-faced man. If what I'm looking for was placed here, it would have been within the last 6 months. Have you been around here or passed through during that time? Have you noticed any changes in the deserted village, like overgrown grass, wild trees, or shifts in the mountains and rivers? Scarface Man shook his head. Not really. This place has been deserted for a long time. We usually stay in other villages and rarely pass through here. To be honest, during Qingming or the Ghost Festival, we just buy some paper money wherever we are and burn it there. The last time, to be honest, during Qingming or the Ghost Festival, we just buy some paper money wherever we are and burn it there. The last time we were here was last winter. There wasn't anything. I remember, an old woman behind the scar-faced man interrupted. Actually, there was something. Leader, do you remember the mountain and the old tree crown we always see when we turn from the village path to the village road? The scar-faced man paused, then slapped his palm. Oh, right. Mount Mushi and the old ginkgo tree. No wonder I felt something was off when we entered the village earlier. The water flowing down Mount Mushi is gone, and the old ginkgo tree's branches are bent strangely. Something's off about the shape of Mount Mushi's peak. I didn't get a good look earlier, so I can't remember exactly how it looked, but... He frowned at Xian. There was an earthquake recently. Since this place is near the mountains, it's not unusual for there to be some changes after a few tremors. Would that count as strange? Xian raised an eyebrow. Of course it counts. If nothing else, the earthquake itself might have been related to his bones. Which mountain is Mount Mushi? Xuanmin asked. The scar-faced man stood by the window and pointed south through the torn paper. There, see it? That one. Mount Mushi is named for its shape, like a thumb. So inspired. What does that mountain look like? Thumb. Juanmin nodded before meeting Shushian's gaze. I'll dig up my own bones, the wise one declared. Everyone in the room shuddered. What did he mean by his own bones? Since when did normal people have bones buried underground that needed to be dug up? Talk less, Xuanmin ordered as he picked up the wooden stick he had used to draw a circle around Shushian earlier. Xuanmin swiftly drew 3 lines on the ground, dividing the room into 3 sections. One for Jiang Xining and his group, one for the beggars, and one for the opera troupe. Stay within the lines and you'll be safe, he told everyone. If you need to leave, just walk out of the room. With that, he nodded and pushed Shushian out the door. The benevolent Lord Shu was extremely quick to act. Spotting the 2 of them, he thought they were leaving Wen village and tried to stop them. Reminds me of Mount Your Finger, you fool. The benevolent Lord Shu was extremely quick to act. Spotting the 2 of them, he thought they were leaving Wen village and tried to stop them. Shushian was hardly soft-hearted compared to Jiang Xining. When he turned cold, he was as unyielding as a glacier. However, most of the time, he was nonchalant. Whether he could be reasoned with depended entirely on his mood. For some reason, Lord Shu seemed to strike a chord with Shushian, or maybe he was in a good mood. Either way, he seemed unwilling to reject Lord Shu's hospitality. We're not leaving the village, Shushian said. We're just borrowing your wheelchair to look around. We'll return it after we're done, since we still need to give it back to you. The benevolent Lord Shu felt somewhat reassured by this and smiled like a Buddha. You don't need to return the chair. It's just gathering dust here. I'm more than happy if it can be of use to you. But you must come back. After the wine, my old friends from the opera troupe will perform. You can't miss it. Shushian had put on a serious front in front of the others, since apart from his casual tone, he was a respectable dragon. Once they left the Shu residence and entered the deserted village, though, he quickly forgot about decorum. He had a wheelchair now. He no longer had to be carried around like a fool. He could go wherever he wanted. Earlier, I let you push me because of those ignorant people inside. You can let go now, Shushian said to Xuanmin, barely suppressing his excitement. A small wheelchair is nothing. I can handle it. Xuanmin gave him a doubtful look, but ultimately let go. After all, he knew Shushian had been holding back for some time. An evil spirit might go mad if not released. And a person who could rot off his own hand was capable of anything when driven that far. Oh yeah, they did that back in the other village. Nevertheless, the moment Xuanmin let go of the wheelchair's handles, he regretted it. He truly experienced what it meant to let go and lose control. In the blink of an eye, a strong wind rose from the ground, roaring like a dragon. White fog blurred Xuanmin's vision. When he brushed away the vapor, he found that the man in the wheelchair had disappeared without a trace, already off to who knew where. This was both expected and unexpected. He never expected Shushian to behave, but he hadn't anticipated such chaos either. Shushian used the wind to propel himself, half pushing and half floating the wheelchair forward. However, he had more experience using the wind to carry his large dragon form, and rarely used it to move something as small as a chair. As a result, he lost control of his strength and sent the simple wheelchair flying forward at breakneck speed. By the time he realized it, he'd crossed most of one village and was just a stone's throw away from Mount Mushi. Oh, people, are you getting lag? Did I lose the bald donkey? Um, is anyone else getting lag? Alright, I'm gonna keep going, but if other people are getting lag, please let me know. Shushion had the nerve to mutter this, on top of wondering how to guide Xuanmin back to him. Okay. He had the string of copper coins in his hand, which could be shaken to create a sound, but he completely forgot about that. Instead, he took in the thick fog around him and the faint outline of the mountain ahead and had a different idea. Okay. Let me know if it gets bad and I'll fix it. I mean, here, I'll just do a quick reset just in case. There you go. His ideas were often unlike anything normal people might think of. The last time he had an idea, he transformed from a dragon to a human in mid-air, sending Lu Nianqi and the others plummeting into a lake like dumplings into a pot. What would he imagine this time? Xuanmin, ghost-like in the fog of the deserted village, scanned the area and followed the faint trace of Shushian's presence. Just as he was striding forward, he suddenly heard a mighty dragon's roar. Surprised, Xuanmin looked up and saw a massive black dragon's head emerge from the dense fog ahead. Over here! The dragon solemnly called out before it flopped back into the fog, presumably because its lower body lacked the strength to hold it up. Shushian's brief transformation into his dragon form resonated with something in the mountains. The moment he ducked back into the fog, the entire deserted village shivered. Oh, fucking hell! They buried my bones in the mud again! Feeling the resonance with the missing part of his body was a joyous moment, but Shushian still seethed with frustration amid his joy. The idea of scouring mountains and digging through soil just to retrieve his scattered bones was a complex emotion that few in the world could possibly understand. He felt the same way when he was beneath Fentu Island, then again in Shito Zhang's courtyard. And as the saying went, a first-time stranger is a second-time friend. He was too familiar with this feeling. Shushian could no longer sit still, and he wouldn't wait for Xuanmin. Since he'd already pointed the monk in his general direction, heading straight for Mount Mushi shouldn't lead him astray. He once again propelled the wheelchair forward at breakneck speed. Soon, he was sitting beside the old ginkgo tree at the foot of Mount Mushi, its trunk bent in a deep bow. The branches and crowns of most trees would stretch toward the sun, even if their trunks bent and curved. For some reason, this old ginkgo tree was like a person bowed so low that their forehead touched their ankles. Its crown practically pointed at the ground. It was a peculiar sight. Shushian had never seen Mount Mushi up close before, and aside from the fact that there was no longer any water flowing down from it, he couldn't discern any other changes. But, looking at the old ginkgo tree, it was clear that its canopy was bent toward the ground because something within it was more alluring than the faint sunlight filtering through the thick fog. To find out where his bone was buried, all he had to do was follow where the old ginkgo's crown pointed. Shushian maneuvered the wheelchair slowly to the muddy ground south of the tree. The patch of mud was about 10 feet square, slightly darker in color than the surrounding area, and more saturated with moisture, indicating that the soil there had been loosened at some point. Whoever had dug there had tried to cover their tracks, but a closer look still revealed the difference. When Shushian approached the spot, the ground beneath the mud began to shudder faintly. Those who had buried the bone had thought that hiding it in this haunted, deserted village would ensure no ordinary person would bother digging it up. They forgot to consider the possibility that the bone's true owner might one day come looking for it. Shushian let out a cold laugh, raised his hand, and curled his fingers into a claw-like shape before clenching his fist. Deep underground, something pulsed like a living heart. It caused the whole of Mount Mushi to shake, startling a flock of birds from the wild forest. The sharp cries of the birds faded into the distance as Shushian clenched his hand again. Bang! This time the entire patch of muddy ground was jolted from within as if it had been plowed. Bang! After the third pulse, Shushian lost all patience and yanked! The entire patch of mud collapsed inward, and as something seemed on the verge of breaking free, the surrounding soil began to vibrate, soften, and till. The mud caved in, forming a dark, gaping hole. The surrounding earth, including the ground beneath Shushian, started to roll and tumble into the abyss, like a whirlpool had formed on flat land and was sucking in everything around it. Would that be a sinkhole? That sounds like a sinkhole. In the blink of an eye, the stooped old ginkgo tree was swallowed by the dark abyss. The vortex continued to expand, and the edges of Mount Mushi crumbled bit by bit, sending rocks tumbling down in the tremors. Even though Shushian quickly retreated in his wheelchair, he couldn't escape its powerful pull. Clearly, all this turmoil was caused by Shushian attempting to retrieve the bone buried underground. It was tied to some kind of array, and disturbing it had thrown the entire deserted village, and perhaps places beyond, into chaos. The thought of having to endure such constraints just to reclaim what was rightfully his made Shushian want to laugh in exasperation. When he relaxed his pull a little, the shaking of the village and the mountain eased a bit. The sucking of the abyss weakened, the soil stopped collapsing into the abyss as dramatically, and even the shaking of his wheelchair lessened. He tightened his grip again. The dragon bones stirred, and the entire land quaked violently once more. The vortex in the ground expanded as hungrily as a black hole devouring everything in its path. Shushian's brow furrowed, his expression turning icy. His pale skin, paired with his sudden stern demeanor, gave him an air of aloofness and detachment, compared to his usual mischievousness and unrestrained self. This rare display of seriousness suited his true nature far better. You stripped me of my bones and tendons, and now you expect me to care about the lives of others? What kind of logic is that? Yet, precisely because this situation was unreasonable and unfair, Shushian held back a fraction of his strength. Shushian's face was still as cold as a winter storm when someone landed nearby. Though they weren't pressed against his back, he could feel the sudden warmth of their body in the damp, gloomy mist. The sensation was so distant that his heart skipped a beat before settling back down. The anger and frustration that had been boiling inside him dissipated almost instantly, replaced by a deep, quiet sense of reassurance. Xuanmen's calm voice sounded behind him. I'll handle it. A thin section of white linen brushed past Shushian's cheek as a lean hand reached over his shoulder and plucked the string of copper coins from his fingers. Shushian was momentarily stunned when he heard the familiar hum of the coins behind him. A tremendous force pressed down on the surrounding vegetation, rocks and mountains. The vortex in the ground seemed to be restrained by an invisible hand, slowing its rotation until it finally froze. The soil and rocks stopped collapsing. Mount Mushi was firmly held in place. You gotta imagine exactly how powerful Xuanmin must be. He literally stopped a mountain from collapsing without touching it. Like just with his powers, he stopped a mountain. Like holy level of ridiculousness. Like, come on, man. And you have to realize he's probably not at full power yet either. Shu Xian instinctively tilted his head up to Xuanmin, who gazed down at him placidly. I'll hold it steady. You focus on retrieving the bone. The impending blizzard in Shu Xian's heart was banished by those simple words. He looked down at the bottomless black hole before him, feeling the dragon bone within it, stirring in resonance within him. Suddenly, he let out a soft laugh, different from his usual mocking or scornful ones. This one carried no sharp edges. It was a genuine, light chuckle. He didn't bother with formalities like, thank you, or I'm indebted to you. He just hummed and relaxed. You've got it steady. I'm pulling it out now. He's pulling it out, everybody. He squeezed his fingers hard. This time, he held nothing back. Though Xuanmin had used immense strength to stabilize the mountain, the ground still rattled. The force beneath the surface shook Xuanmin's hand violently, splitting open a wound in his palm. Yet his expression remained unchanged, and his fingers holding the copper coins stayed fast. I'm so glad it's not just me, Annika. Phrasing. As Shu Xian exerted more and more force, the hum of the copper coins grew louder, and the surrounding mist seemed to be drawn by some kind of energy. It gathered around the two of them. Just as the wound on Xuanmin's palm tore wide open, a dragon's roar echoed from within the black hole. A stark white bone broke free from the ground and leapt into Shu Xian's hand. The moment it touched his palm, it melted like wax under fire, seeping into his pale skin and merging into his body. It was as if someone had lit a fire in his palm, which then spread through his veins, burning all the way to his heart, up his spine, and into his brain. For a moment, Shu Xian felt as though his blood and bones were on fire, the heat threatening to burst through his skin. He could feel nothing else, not even where he was or what was happening around him. The only thing he remembered was that Xuanmin, someone he could trust, was by his side. I did a double take too. Are you really talking about a mountain there? Right? Especially followed by a line like this. The only thing he could remember was that Xuanmin, someone he could trust, was by his side. Some time later, Shu Xian found something to relieve the scorching heat. He clung to it, letting the coolness soothe him before his boiling mind gradually cleared. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he had transformed back into his dragon form. Judging by the overturned wheelchair in the grass and the scattered vegetation, the transformation had been rather abrupt. And the thing that had relieved the scorching heat was, unfortunately, Xuanmin himself. Shu Xian had coiled his dragon body around Xuanmin as much as possible. Not only that, he was also rubbing his scales against Xuanmin, trying to cool every overheated part of his body against Xuanmin's chilly skin. Yeah. Do we have a picture? I don't think we have a picture. Oh! Oh-ho! Guess what? There's a picture very, very soon. What to do? This was a bit embarrassing. A mighty dragon reduced to acting like a giant, clingy pet. Anyone who knew the desperate situation would realize he was just using Xuanmin to cool down, but those who didn't might think Shu Xian was overly affectionate. The key problem was that no one except him actually knew said desperate situation, not even Xuanmin, who was currently wrapped in his coils. With a look of utter resignation on his dragon face, Shu Xian sneaked a glance at Xuanmin. Yeah, relieve the heat. Yeah, no, I was so much phrasing this chapter. Even with the massive black dragon wrapped around him, Xuanmin stood as still and calm as ever, his eyes shut, one hand in a mudra, and the other gently fiddling with the string of copper coins. Shu Xian had previously used the spiritual energy of the coins to nourish his bones, so there was now a faint connection between him and the coins, as if a thread linked them together. Whether it was due to the influence of his returned bone or something else, the coins seemed a little different from before. As Xuanmin's thumb rubbed the edge of the coin, Shushan could just sense something loosening within them. The surface of the coins also began to gleam with a yellowish sheen, as if they were finally shedding their dull, rusty exteriors. Xuanmin had mentioned that each of the 5 coins was sealed, and 2 of the seals had started to loosen. Perhaps, given the right opportunity, those 2 seals could be broken. This seemed to be that opportunity. Since Xuanmin remained unfazed by the dragon coiling around him, Shushian's embarrassment vanished. Xuanmin's body temperature was incredibly soothing. Once Shushian lost his reason to hesitate, he shamelessly clung to Xuanmin. He was determined to cool down before letting go. Yeah, oh ho! The coins in Xuanmin's hand jingled rhythmically, and with each tremor, Shushian felt a strange tingling sensation spread through his body. Every scale on his dragon form seemed to be opening up, allowing the burning heat beneath his skin to dissipate. Though slightly uncomfortable, this connection with the coins was benefiting him at the moment, so he didn't object. Click. A soft mechanical sound seemed to echo in his mind. In the midst of alternating waves of heat and cold, Shushian drowsily opened his eyes and rubbed his massive body against Xuanmin a couple more times. He lifted his head and drooped it on Xuanmin's shoulder, where he saw that the coins in Xuanmin's hand had changed. 2 of them had completely shed their dull exteriors and were now smooth and gleaming, radiating a strong, vibrant, spiritual energy. Xuanmin has made his peace with the cat distribution system. He very much so has. Very resignedly done so. However, he also noticed a wound on Xuanmin's hand. It ran across his palm, oozing blood that dripped to the ground, joining several existing blood stains. The wound had been caused by the earlier struggle. For once, Shushian felt a twinge of guilt. As a dragon, his entire body was a treasure trove, from his scales to his saliva. Stopping the bleeding would be a simple task. With his brain still fogged by the heat, Shushian lowered his head and licked the wound. The second the taste of blood touched his tongue, the heat in his mind dissipated. At the same time, Xuanmin's fingers stopped rubbing the coins and he opened his eyes. Should I try to explain the situation now, or is my dignity already beyond saving? Sorry, Truffle. He's licking it. If you're confused, here's his eye, tongue, face. I feel like he's kind of like all on fire right now. And he's still completely deadpan. Schwanman's totally shut down. Yeah, for someone who is very cleanliness, hyper cleanliness aware. Yes. It's a great picture. I love the scales. They look like my scales. Love it. All right. Quick sip and then we'll start again. Pen. There's my pen. All right, 110. Chapter 23. Old Drumbeat. Of all the art, they defected the licking. I mean, it's a choice. Those last few pages were the dirtiest non-dirty stuff I've run into since the Gambler's Den. Right? There's so many innuendos! Like, unintentional innuendos! Chapter 23, Old Drumbeat. Shushan held stiff for a long while, his dragon scales bristling. It wasn't until he noticed Xuanmin's wound healing at a speed visible to the naked eye that he snapped out of it. See, the bleeding stopped. Don't you think you should thank me? He asked. As soon as the words left his mouth, he convinced himself that he had a point, and his lost dignity seemed to return, revitalizing him. It was then that he realized Xuanmin had been standing still for quite some time, with his eyes open and a frown on his face. He still had his hand raised in the mudra, and he had neither put away the broken string of copper coins nor glanced at the wound that Shushan had licked. Now that's strange. Shushan stretched his neck to look, but the angle was too high for him to see. To avoid burying Xuanmin alive, Shushan had restrained himself when transforming back into his dragon form. Still, his body was massive even when minimized. After some thought, he tilted his head, lowered his neck, and looked at Xuanmin from an angle almost touching the ground. From this new perspective, Xuanmin's expression became much clearer. His brows were slightly furrowed, his thin lips pressed together, and although his eyes were open, they were clouded with a layer of dark mist, deep and bottomless, that stole any trace of light. His gaze seemed unfocused, as if he hadn't yet awakened from a nightmare. And they definitely do know their audience. What startled Shushan the most was the visible network of veins on the left side of Xuanmin's neck that resembled an indigo spiderweb. It stretched from his jawbone down into the collar of his robes. Against Xuanmin's pale skin and his cloud-like white robe, it looked both worrying and strangely menacing. Even someone like Shushan, who didn't care about blood on flesh, was at a loss for words. Without a second thought, he raised a claw and hooked it, pulling open the left side of Xuanmin's robes. Shushan hissed at what was revealed. The web-like veins covered Xuanmin's entire shoulder and extended along the muscle lines of his shoulder blade, reaching deeper into his body. Depending on what side of the body is, that it's left side, so it's here, and then if it branches down, his heart's right here. So, like, if we were talking modern medicine aspects, like, if it was on the right side, it's bad, but if it's on the left, it's directly into the heart. The web-like veins crossed Xuanmin's entire shoulder and extended along the muscle lines of his shoulder blade, reaching deeper into his body. So, shoulder blade deeper in. Shushan flipped the robes back with his claw, muttering with a grave expression, "What on earth is this?" Judging by the way those marks were spreading, it wouldn't be long before they covered half, if not all, of Schwanman's body, turning him from a revered monk into a demonic one. No matter how Shushian looked at it, Schwanman's condition was not normal. The only question was whether abruptly waking him up would cause any problems. Shushian considered this, then raised a claw and waved it tentatively in front of Schwanman's eyes. Schwanmin showed no reaction. He didn't even blink. His dark eyes remained shrouded in a thick layer of mist. Why did the bald donkey open his eyes earlier? 67. All right. Shushian had licked him. But was it because he had simulated the wound on the skin between his thumb and forefinger, or was it because of his dragon saliva? After a pause, Shushian licked the mostly healed wound on Schwanman's hand again. Schwanman's fingers twitched slightly. Surely I don't have to keep licking until the bald donkey wakes up. What kind of nonsense is this? 68. This was all so absurd. If it hadn't been for the fact that he knew Schwanmin's character, stoic, never playful, he would have suspected that Schwanmin was messing with him. It was a good thing it was Schwanmin who was in this situation. If it were anyone else, the thought of having to lick someone else made Shushian feel like his brain might explode from disgust. He shuddered violently, squinting at Schwanmin's face. If you don't open your eyes soon, I'm going to give you a bath. Just as Shushian bared his teeth, figuring out the best angle to strike, the sinister network of veins under Schwanmin's robes faded like the tide receding from the shore. It disappeared from his arms and shoulders, retreating to his neck, and eventually condensed back into a small mole. Once those marks vanished, the mist covering Schwanmin's eyes dissipated. His dark eyes, now clear like polished glass, regained their light in a flash. Immediately after, his brows twitched, and his fingers, which had been rubbing the copper coins, tightened. He was truly awake. He caught a movement out of the corner of his eye. Instinctively, he turned his head, right on time to come face to face with someone who had been plotting to take a bite. They stared at one another. "What are you doing?" Schwanmin finally asked. Shushian was stumped. He couldn't very well say he was figuring out how to take a bite, could he? How about, let me use your head to check if my teeth still work? No, that kind of provocative talk was better left unsaid. Shushian had no qualms about annoying others, but he had to weigh his words carefully with Schwanmin. After all, in a way, this bald donkey seemed born to keep him in check. Shushian thought of many possible replies. In the end, he said, "Can't I even yawn without you interfering? Wow." In the past, Schwanmin's cold expression had seemed to say, "Do as you please." But now it was strangely solemn. Some lingering emotion seemed to cling to him. "Why are you making such a bitter face? Why weren't you responding earlier, huh? What was with that?" Shushian asked. Schwanmin glanced down at the thin string hanging from his fingers, then rubbed the 2 copper coins that had shed their rust. He seemed to be thinking as he hung the coin string back on his waist. "I remembered some things," he said. "What things?" Shushian prodded, though he backed off almost immediately. "Of course, as usual, if there's anything you don't want to or can't talk about, you can pretend you don't remember." That is surprisingly nice of Shushian. Let's be real. Like, he's very pushy, but he respects that boundary, which, power to him. Like, Even asking such a simple question was out of character for Shushan. Given his usual temperament, other people's affairs were none of his business, especially personal matters. He had no interest in if others were willing to talk, he would listen. The amount of attention he paid depended on his mood. If he liked the person, he might tolerate a few extra words. If he didn't, he wouldn't hear a single sentence, and if others didn't want to talk, he would never pry. I respect that about him. I very much respect that about him. Xuan Min was an exception. Xu Xian always felt a trickle of curiosity when it came to the monk's affairs. Back when Xu Xian had interrogated him at the inn, there had been a matter of practicality. That had been a matter of practicality. After all, his identity and background were related to their situation. Not so this time. There was no other considerations, but Xu Xian still asked because he wanted to hear about Xuanmin's personal memories. It was only after Xu Xian blurted out the question that he remembered Xuanmin's personality. 9 times out of 10, he would speak about such things. Xu Xian had added the second line to give Xuanmin a way out. Surprisingly, he didn't take the out. He seemed unwilling to maintain his aloof weariness with Xu Xian. He looked up, staring at a fixed point in the distant white mist, as if organizing his thoughts. Not much, and it's very fragmented, he said after a moment. It was mostly scenes from my youth, sitting on a bench copying scriptures. But what? Xu Xian asked. Xuanmin's slight hesitation and small grimace suggested he had remembered something unpleasant. In 2 fleeting scenes, I was holding something, Xuanmin said with a trace of disgust. What was it? It looked like human skin. What? Xuanmin glanced at Xu Xian and repeated himself in a low voice. Human skin, torn into pieces. The largest, no bigger than a palm. The smallest, smaller than a coin. 2 pieces were slightly thicker, and the rest were very thin. Interesting. Did not expect that. But all right. Xu Xian had imagined many things Xuanmin might have been holding. A wooden fish, paper talismans, books, writing brushes, or even a begging bowl. The answer he'd given was beyond any reasonable expectation. Human skin? Are you sure? Xuanmin nodded. Then, do you remember the context? Maybe you picked it up. But even as he said it, he knew it was unlikely. Human skin wasn't something you would pick up like it was nothing. If it were lying around everywhere, it would indicate a disaster. What if the human skin was directly connected to something Xuanmin did? What kind of good deed could be associated with the acquisition of human skin? Although Xuanmin had a different aura from that of normal, ordinary monks, it was hard to imagine him doing anything that violent. Wait, no. Xu Xian's memory traced the network of veins that had covered half of Xuanmin's body earlier, and how, long before they'd become this close, he'd told Jiang Xining that Xuanmin had a chilling ferociousness, like a frosty blade sheathed in a thin layer of plain white cloth, calm and cold, but with a sharp, hard edge. When necessary, he might even break the precept against killing. So the preset rule against killing. But that was different from being murderous. Xu Xian momentarily drifted away on these thoughts. When he came back to the present, he noticed Xuanmin staring at him with an indescribable expression. Xu Xian took a moment to recover before he asked smoothly, "When was this, anyway? Still in your youth?" Are you sure? You don't remember the context, so how do you know it was from your youth? Xuanmin spread his palm. The hands of children looked different. Besides, there were copied scriptures on the desk in front of me at that time. Xu Xian blinked. Were you trying to piss off Buddha by copying scriptures while holding human flesh? All jokes aside, Shushan found it even harder to imagine a young Xuan Min doing any kind of violent deeds. There had to be more to the story, right? Well, instead of making blind assumptions, why not wait until you remember the context? Shushan drawled. You just broke the seal on the copper coins and remembered some scenes. Maybe if you break another one, you'll remember more. If you break all 5, you might fully recover your memory. There was some logic to this. Both of them were straightforward people and did not want to waste too much energy on fragmented memories. Let's go. Xuanmin patted Shushian's noble dragon chin with the back of his hand. Shushian was stunned for a moment until he remembered that he was still wrapped around the monk. If he didn't transform back into human form, Xuanmin couldn't leave. With a cough, he summoned the wind to pull the wheelchair over, transformed back into human form, dressed himself, and sat back in the chair. While Shushian adjusted his robes and sleeves, Xuanmin stepped forward and dug out a few copper nails and paper talismans from the pit where the dragon bone had been buried. He wrapped these items in a clean cloth and put them away, then stood up and walked back. There was no way Xuanmin would let Shushian wander off after he'd disappeared earlier. Xuanmin gripped the chair's handles firmly. However, when his gaze fell on the skin between his fingers, he paused. The wound that had been torn open on his hand was almost scabbed over. In a little while, the skin would be smooth and flawless, as if it had never been injured. Shushian had treated his wound. But was dragon saliva something to be used so casually? Ugh. Now all I can picture is just like a random like circular potion jar, and it's just like this gloopy liquid, and it's like dragon saliva used only in emergencies. Ugh. Shushian finished adjusting his robes, and seeing that Xuanmin hadn't moved, couldn't help saying, "Why are you still standing there?" To his surprise, Xuanmin raised his injured hand. Do you know the effects of dragon saliva? Dragon saliva, tiny midi like keychain that, hey, you can make it. Feel free. Total license to you, Annika. If you want to make an acrylic water keychain, like, you set up a link, I'd probably buy it too, Truffle. To his surprise, Xuanmin raised his injured hand. Do you know the effects of dragon saliva? His expression was still calm and indifferent, but his tone was uneven, as if his emotions were divided. Hello, Esper Lady. So what's happened is we left, Xuanmin and Shushian left the Master Shu's house. We have acknowledged that he is a ghost. The troop usually gathers each year because they made a promise that they would come back and play on his birthday every year. So they're honoring that. They don't realize they're dead yet, so it's a little ironic. And then Xuanmin and Shushian set out to the mountain that kind of caused the fall, and it's basically Mount Thumb because it looks like a thumb. Shushian called for his bone. It caused a sinkhole. Xuanmin stopped it, but he went into another one of the trances with the spider mole. And Shushian got him out of it by licking his wound on his hand with his special magical dragon saliva that healed the wound and gradually got him out of the trance. And that is where we are right now. Oh my gosh, and a chapter with the most innocent innuendos of a non-sexual scene that you have ever seen since Gambling Den. So you're definitely going to want to go back, if nothing else, to watch that scene. But, yeah. Some, yeah. Since we literally just finished it, here's a picture of him licking his hand. There you go. Okay. To his surprise, Xuanmin raised his injured hand. Do you know the effects of dragon saliva? His expression was still calm and indifferent, but his tone was uneven, as if his emotions were divided. Of course. This bald donkey really knows how to hit a sore spot. Shushian's mouth twitched. The self-justification he'd made earlier suddenly lost its effect. Now that he was back in human form, thinking about what he had done was quite something. Oh no. And 69. Bald donkeys. But Shushian kept a straight face, determined to argue even if he had no grounds. No, he looked pretty into it. Yeah. He did not mind licking his palm. Why would I need to know the specific effects of something for my own body? Knowing that it's useful is enough. Why bother with the details? It's not like I'm going to chop myself up for medicine. Do I look crazy? He snorted and tapped the armrest of the chair impatiently. I treated your wound, and instead of thanking me, you're spouting nonsense. Let's go. His intention was to bluff with an authoritative and unassailable tone to prevent Xuanmin from overthinking about the whole licking the wound thing. Sure enough, when he peeked at Xuanmin out of the corner of his eye, the monk shook his head and lowered his injured hand. Let's go, Xuanmin said with a hint of resignation. Clearly, he had no intention of pressing the topic. Shushian was quite satisfied. The two returned to the residence of the benevolent Lord Shu without delay. They deliberately avoided the main entrance and stole into the courtyard from the side entrance. The front hall, which had previously been receiving guests, was now empty. The clinking of cups and the sound of laughter and conversation drifted from the back hall, still muffled as if through a thick fog. Jiang Xining had let out a long sigh of relief as soon as Shushian and Xuanmin entered the east room. You're finally back. With those two gone, there hadn't been anyone dependable left in the room. If the benevolent Lord Shu and his people suddenly went wild, there would be no stopping them. Oh, why do you look so scared? Shushian asked in a mocking voice. If you don't go out and show off, the benevolent Lord Shu won't come in. Unless he's unlucky enough to need something from the east room. At this, the others in the room stirred and looked curious. If we don't go out, he won't come in. Are you sure? Jiang Xining said. By the way, I heard a faint commotion outside earlier, as if they were preparing wine and tea. The sound seemed to be headed toward the back. It's like they've completely forgotten about us in the East Wing. Shushian waved his hand. It's natural they won't remember. Earthbound spirits were not living people. They had strong impressions of the faces and events they constantly saw, but reacted sluggishly to intruders. For example, when Lord Shu and his people noticed Shushian and his group, they engaged in normal small talk and even seemed too hospitable. However, if they lost sight of Shushian and the group, they would quickly forget about the intruders as if they'd never been there. That was why they could stay in the East Room for so long without anyone checking on them. But as soon as they left the room, the benevolent Lord Shu's enthusiasm would reignite. I see. The scar-faced man and the others nodded with enlightenment. The former was about to say something when Shushian pointed at him. But I'm not talking about you. Intruders only refer to us. You've come here every year from the time the benevolent Lord Shu was alive until after his death. To the people in the back hall, you're somewhere in between, not intruders. They've temporarily forgotten about you, but they'll come looking for you soon. Sure enough, voices could be heard approaching from the back hall. Where's Dai Liang? My memory is failing me. I actually forgot to greet an old friend. My apologies. Lord Shu was talking to someone, and his voice drew closer and closer to the East Room's door. The people in the room started. De Liang, are you in there? Lord Shu's voice came from behind the door. The banquet is ready. We've saved seats for you. Creak. The old door made a sharp noise at the slightest movement. We're here, we're here. The scar-faced man and the others spun around before the door was pushed open. They formed a cluster that blocked Lord Lu's line of sight. We are just resting. We'll be right there. From the perspective of the others, only their backs were visible. The benevolent Lord Shu's cheerful voice came through this wall. Come now, you must be hungry after such a long journey. Let's go. The scar-faced man chuckled deeply and agreed. Then, one by one, the members of the opera troupe left the room and followed the benevolent Lord Shu toward the back hall. The scar-faced man lingered by the East Room's door before he left. You should leave while you can. Once the opera starts, we can't help you. It'll be hard to get away. Shushan had already planned to do so, and now was the perfect opportunity, since the scar-faced man and the others had drawn the benevolent Lord Shu away. The people in the room all stood up except for the beggar with the severed hands, who hesitated. Didn't you ask us to save them? Jiang Shining pointed to the old man and the two children lying unconscious on the bed. Let's take them back to the pharmacy. Be careful. Use clothes to cover their wounds. The beggars exchanged glances, but agreed without further hesitation. They wrapped up the three who were covered with sores and carried them on their backs as they walked away with the others. Xuanmin gripped Shushian's wheelchair and strode out. Ahead of them, the scar-faced man suddenly turned around. I can tell you two are capable people. I could sense some changes and movement in one village earlier. He looked toward the door that led to the back hall. The laughter and conversations of people who had been dead for years floated through the air between them. Forgive me for asking, but are they about to dissipate? Xuanmin hummed in agreement. The array that disrupted the energy flow has been broken. The spirits won't be trapped here anymore. They'll probably last until nightfall. No more, Shushan added, his eyes on the sky outside. To Jiang Shining and the other intruders, the earthborn spirits were a potential danger that was best avoided. No matter how hospitable and harmless they seemed, they couldn't be trusted, only pitied. But for the scar-faced man and his group, they were familiar relatives and neighbors. Each face, gesture, and laugh invoked a string of memories. I mean, in a way, he's lucky in that he's gotten to hold on to, but not just Lord Shu, but it sounds like others of his family, his neighbors, etc., for longer since their death. But I do also understand wanting them to be at peace, be at rest. The scar-faced man nodded, his face a mix of emotions. After again, that's fine. Shushan was unusually well-behaved on the way back. He didn't summon thunderclouds or rain, nor did he transform into his true dragon form. He didn't even send the carriage flying into the sky. The only trick he pulled was expanding the interior of the carriage a little. He also summoned a gust to push the horse along, which sped up the journey considerably. Jiang Shining, unaccustomed to Shushan's lack of mischief, scrutinized him throughout the trip. What are you pondering so seriously? Shushan glanced at him one time, then again. He clicked his tongue. I guess you could be considered a half-baked physician, huh? Shushan murmured. Can't you even ever say anything nice? Jiang Xining wondered. He decided to look somewhere else. It didn't last long as Shushan yanked Jiang Xining closer. Actually, that's a Jiang Xining suffering. 23. That didn't last long as Shushan yanked Jiang Xining closer. Tell me, what do you know? Or do you know what dragon saliva is used for? Jiang Xining gave Shushan a strange look, as if he were a pervert. Hey, what's with that look? I'm asking you a question. It's a bit hard to say anything when a dragon asks some human about the uses of dragon saliva, Jiang Xining replied slowly. Don't you know yourself? Can I put this on back? No? You're good. Shushan rolled his eyes. Do you spend your free time researching whether your own eyeballs can be used as medicine and what effects they might have? It's not like it'd have any effect on me anyway. That's true, Jiang Xining muttered. Besides, I can test things on others a couple of times and get a rough idea of the effects. But where am I supposed to test dragon saliva? It's probably best not to test it at all, Jiang Xining warned. Why? Jiang Xining had initially kept his voice low, but after a few sentences, he subconsciously returned to his normal volume. I've never seen anyone use it myself, but I've heard a few rumors. Dragon saliva, well. Abruptly, a hand reached over and interrupted Jiang Xining. He looked up in confusion as Xuanmin placed a string of copper coins into Shushan's hand. Next, the monk casually slapped a paper talisman on Shushan's forehead. With one more swift motion, Xuanmin turned Shushan chair and all to face away from Jiang Xining. He then gave Jiang Xining a placid, silent look. I'm not sure what I said wrong, but if he's looking at me like that, it must have been something inappropriate. Jiang Xining smiled tightly at Xuanmin and shut his mouth. He turned to look out the carriage window instead. You bald donkey, just you wait, Shushan growled. Once I tear off this damn talisman, I'm going to beat you to death. Do you know how infuriating half-finished sentences are? I mean, I get it. And we have reached 70! Unfortunately, the paper talisman seemed to be stuck on Shushan indefinitely. He still couldn't move a muscle by the time they arrived at the Fang residence and settled into one of the side rooms. Xuanmen chose a corner for Shushan, claiming it was rich in spiritual energy and suitable for recuperation. This time, the bald donkey showed some mercy and didn't make him face the wall. But facing the door was equally embarrassing. What was he supposed to say to any visitors? Huh? 71. Maybe we'll reach 75 this time. That'd be cool. I bet we'll reach 100 by the next stream. Very possible, Truffle. Shushan continued to fume. Earlier, while Shushan and Xuanmin had gone to dig up the dragon bone, Jiang Xining had explained the whole situation to his sister and brother-in-law. He knew that a drop of her blood was needed to send their parents on their final journey. However, since ghosts couldn't appear in broad daylight, the ritual had to wait until sunset. Jiang Jing's parents were of utmost importance to her, so as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, she and her brother went to find Xuanmin. The sun was dim. By evening, lamps lit the room. Shushan sat in his corner with his eyes closed. He quietly fiddled with the copper coins as he nurtured his body. The warm yellowish light cast gentle shadows on him, giving his pale skin a faint warm glow. As soon as the Jiang siblings entered the room, they instinctively subdued their movements. Fortunately, Xuanmin was a man of few words and little preamble. He placed the Jiang family's silver medical bell on the table. From a hidden pouch at his waist, he pulled out a cloth bundle, unfolded it, and took out a silver needle of just the right thickness. He handed it to Jiang Shijing. Draw 3 drops of blood from the Laogong point, Xuanmin instructed. Jiang Shijing took the needle, heated it over the lamp flame, then pricked the Laogong point on her palm. She handed the needle back to Xuanmin. Drip the blood here, Xuanmin said, pointing to 3 spots on the medical bell, from west to east. Jiang Shijing held her breath and squeezed a drop of blood onto each of the 3 spots. As soon as the blood droplets landed on the silver bell, they began to move on their own. They filled the grooves of the bell and flowed around it. At certain points, the entire bell would vibrate like it was enduring some kind of impact or torment. The faint buzzing sounds made the Jiang siblings visibly anxious. Only after the 3 drops of blood had traversed every groove and crevice of the bell did they finally drip off the edge and onto the table. First, Xuanmin washed his hands, then he took a brush and wrote the names of the Jiang couple on a piece of yellow paper. He folded the paper 3 times and placed it on top of the medical bell before he set it alight. Finally, with the flame from the paper, he lit a long incense stick. The thin wisp of smoke carried a unique fragrance that spread through the room and calmed everyone's minds. As the incense burned down to its end, no one in the room spoke a word save for Xuanmin, who softly recited a deep, resonant mantra. Ding! The civil medical bell rang with a lingering sound that made the Jiang siblings shudder. Ding! It rang again. Is that Mom and Dad? Jiang Shijing asked, her tears already dripping onto the table. They've been trapped for too long and can no longer manifest physically, Xuanmin said. They can only communicate through sound to bid you farewell. After all these steps, the washing of hands, the writing of talismans, the burning of incense, and the reciting of the mantra, the deceased could be sent on their way. The Jiang siblings stared at the medical bell, unable to see their parents' form but unwilling to blink. In the corner, Shushian opened his eyes. He gazed at a point in the empty space above the table until he closed his eyes in lieu of a nod. This was his way of thanking the kindness of the couple that had spanned over a decade. The medicine you applied to my wounds worked well, and the copper brazier was wonderfully warm against my hand. Thank you, and farewell. In the courtyard of the Shu residence in Wen Village, the female lead and male lead were singing in a melodious tone, their voices undulating with grace. The gongs and drums accompanied them perfectly. From now on, let not the moon sink below the mountain ridge. This same play had been performed for many years, yet no one grew tired of it. The people in the courtyard still loved the lyrics and the performances. Old faces, old homes, old stages. It was as if the past decade had never occurred and there was no separation between life and death. The benevolent Lord Shu sat at the table, sipping tea and watching the coming and goings of the stage. His fingers tapped on the table in time with the gentle melodies. After savoring the performance for a long while, he spoke softly. Di Liang, you've worked hard. As the troop leader, the scar-faced man didn't need to perform. He was at the same table as Lord Shu. He was momentarily stunned upon hearing this and turned to see Lord Shu smiling at him, a smile filled with meaning. as if he already knew that the deserted village was no more and that his old friends were gone. Di Liang was silent for a time. Eventually, he picked up his unfinished cup of tea and tipped it toward the benevolent Lord Shu before taking a sip. Next year, we might not be able to come ourselves. His expression, too, carried many unspoken words. After finishing their tea, the two men exchanged one more smile. They had fulfilled a timeless promise and were now bidding each other a silent farewell. It's time for you to go, and me as well. The sky darkened completely. Slowly, the perpetual fog of the deserted village began to disperse. Like the thick mist, the faint sounds of the opera faded and drifted away. Let not the moon sink below the mountain ridge. No more shall it dim, no more shall people age, for 100 years should pass like this night. If you come to listen, I will come to sing, a promise worth 1,000 pieces of gold, regardless of life or death. All right, and that is the end of Arc 4. We still have another chapter left, but we are about to start Arc 4. Did I say Arc 4 or Arc 3? Because we're about to start Arc 4. We just ended Arc 3. Why does my heating pad feel like... Oh, that's why my heating pad feels like it's not working. It fell down. Duh. It's like, why am I still so cold? Yeah, no, that's very powerful ending. Okay. Arc 4. Oh, I gotta write down the time. Okay. Arc 4, Unchanged. Chapter 24, Bone-Dwelling Threads. The Fang household consisted of around a dozen people. The old master and mistress had passed away, and now the family was managed by Fang Chang and his wife, Jiang Shijing. Uncle Chen served as the steward, while Aunt Chen was both the housekeeper and the cook. The couple had a pair of twin sons who managed the front of the herbal shop, handling prescriptions and bookkeeping. However, the account books were always reviewed by Fang Cheng and Jiang Shijing at night. Xingxi, who had lost her parents at a young age, had been taken in by the late master and mistress of the Fang family. Since Jiang Shijing married into the family, Xingxi had been her personal maid. Though nominally a servant, she had learned a great deal about medicine and healing from Jiang Shijing and could be a valuable assistant in critical moments. The rest of the household were helpers who took care of miscellaneous tasks, such as gathering and drying herbs. There were also a few young apprentices sent by other families. However, the helpers were not always around, since they also often traveled far to collect herbs and might be gone for many days. The young apprentices did not come every day either. They were mostly from poor families and had to help with household chores in addition to learning their craft. Thus, the bustle of the Fang family's herbal shop was usually concentrated in the front, while the back courtyard was relatively quiet. That night, however, the back courtyard of the Fang family's herbal shop was perhaps the liveliest it had ever been. The beggars that Fang Chang and Jiang Shijing had brought back had cleaned themselves up and reluctantly changed into the padded jackets provided by Uncle and Aunt Chen. Though the jackets were not new, they were clean and intact, without any holes or loose padding. The Fang family's long-standing friendship with the Jiang family and their eventual union through marriage was not without reason. Everyone in the household shared a tendency to worry about others. Aunt Chen clicked her tongue at the sight of the beggar's frostbitten hands and feet. Without a word, she dug out some spare hand warmers, filled them with charcoal, and handed them to the beggars. Here, warm yourselves. Look at how frostbitten you are. Hey, don't scratch. I know it itches, but don't scratch it. Frostbite always itches when it starts to thaw. Stay here and warm yourselves for a while. I'll go get some medicine for you. These beggars were not lazy by nature. They had been forced into their current situation due to famine in their hometowns and physical disabilities. Regardless, they had kidnapped people, which was inexcusable. Most people would have let them go without further ado, but the Fing family did not. Not only did they forgive the beggars, but they also treated them as guests and offered to heal their ailments. It was truly an act of returning good for evil. After being settled in by Aunt Chen, the beggars were overwhelmed with guilt. Their earlier bravado in the wilderness had completely dissipated. D- don't trouble yourself, several of them stuttered. We're used to the cold. This frostbite isn't new. Just leave it be. Perhaps it was because she was in her own home, but Aunt Chen's authority seemed to grow. She glared at them. Are you the one with the injuries, or am I? Do you know medicine, or do I? Keep warming yourselves. Don't let go of those hand warmers. I'll be back soon. The twin children of Aunt and Uncle Chen, who happened to be passing by, recalled their childhood scoldings when they heard their mother's tone. They instinctively ducked their heads and tried to slip away, but before they could turn around, Aunt Chen called out to them. Where are you two running off to? Is there a ghost chasing you? Come here. The brothers, Ping and Shu An, awkwardly spun around and forced smiles onto their faces. When they spoke, it was in unison. What is it, Mom? We were just closing the shop and need to deliver the account books to young Master Fang. How big are those account books? Do you need two people to carry them? She pointed at one of them. You, go get a cup of strong liquor and some gauze. Shuan, the younger brother, muttered. Strong liquor? What for? Did Dad upset you? I love that that's where he went first. Not, oh, medicine? No, it's like, did Dad upset you and you're gonna take a shot? I'm liking Auntie Chen more and more. Meanwhile, his older brother grabbed the account books and made a quick escape. Like your father has the guts. Aunt Chen pointed at the beggars in the room. Everyone here has frostbite. I need to treat them. At the mention of frostbite, Shuan's face turned a bit green. As a child, he had been quite mischievous and had often picked fights with Shu Ping. One snowy day, the two went out to play in the snow, but they ended up fighting as usual. They were covered in snow from head to toe. Shu An, with his reckless determination, buried his brother up to his neck in snow. In the end, not only had his hands frozen red, he also received a spanking from his mother that had left his backside swollen for days. His brother laughed at him for a month. Of course he would. That's such sibling behavior. Soon after, neither brother had much to laugh about. Once again, they played in the snow for too long. Upon returning home, they soaked their numb hands and feet in hot water without a second thought. Ooh, I'm surprised about that. If they've grown up around medicine, you don't do that. You warm it up slow. The sudden shift from cold to hot caused frostbite to develop on their fingers and heels, which swelled up like radishes. The itching was hellish, almost unbearable. Aunt Chen had chopped up ginger, extracted its spicy juice, mixed it with strong liquor, and applied it to the frostbite. Shu Ping was fine, just swollen, but Shu An's skin cracked in a few spots. The pain made him cry, snot and all. His brother laughed at him for another month. That experience was not so forgettable that even now Shu An couldn't help grimacing at the thought of it. When Aunt Chen wasn't looking, he gestured to the beggars in the room. Good luck. Frostbite was common in the cold and damp winters of Qingping. Some people tried to reduce the swelling at home, while others came to the herbal shop for remedies. Aunt Chen had dealt with many such cases and was skilled at it. She quickly followed the same steps she had with Shu An, then used gauze to apply the mixture to the beggar's frostbitten skin. This is good. It might hurt if there are cracks, but it works fast, Aunt Chen said as she applied the treatment. The beggar, however, was already tearing up from the pain. Thus was the group of once defiant individuals tamed by Aunt Chen in less than a night. They sat with their hands covered in ginger and liquor, tears in their eyes, asking if there was anything they could do to help. Sitting idle was too embarrassing. While this was going on, Feng Cheng and Jiang Shijing had also gone to work. The entire back courtyard was lively except for one room which remained tightly shut and tranquil. This room was occupied by Xuanmin and Xushian. The Feng residence, though not small, was limited in space. The beggars were divided into 2 rooms, and the sick occupied another. This left only 2 empty rooms. One was taken by Shi Tuzhang, Lun Yanqi, and Jiang Xining, who didn't need sleep. The last room was for the 2 wise ones to share. Since they had shared a room before and neither of them particularly needed to sleep, they had no objections. Well, of course, Shu Xian, who had been slapped with a talisman and forced to face the wall, had wanted to complain, but for some inexplicable reason he swallowed his protests. Perhaps it was because he had been controlled for so long that it had become a routine. A day without someone controlling him felt strangely uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not gonna king shame. Like, you do you, king. You just might need to talk it out a little bit more with Xuan Min. And yeah, Aunt Chen is the sort of grown-up Mao Mao wants to be, I think. I feel like Aunt Chen with just a little more sass, yes. I could definitely see that, Truffle. She would like Aunt Chen. She would definitely like Aunt Chen. After performing the rites for the Jiang couple in the evening, Xuanmin had closed the door and began meditating by the bed. From the day Xushian met him, Xuanmin had never laid down to sleep. At night, he would either sit by the table with his eyes closed or meditate cross-legged by the bed. He always maintained his icy, unshakable demeanor. Even with his eyes closed, he exuded aloofness. Xushian was using the copper coins to heal his spine, so he was too preoccupied to cause trouble or make a fuss for Xuanmin. As a result, the room fell into complete silence, so quiet that the Feng family didn't dare disturb them. Earlier, during dinner, Jiang Shijing and Feng Chen had come to invite them to eat. They knocked on the door but received no response. For a second, they feared something happened to the 2 inside. Jiang Xining, taking advantage of his paper body form, slipped through the door crack and peeked around. When he emerged, he waved one hand at his sister and brother-in-law. Don't bother calling them. If they're hungry, they'll come out on their own. He didn't fully understand what Xuanmin and Xushian were recuperating from, but it seemed profound and not something to be interrupted. Moreover, these 2 were not ordinary people. Missing a meal or 2 wasn't a big deal for them. The Feng family weren't yet familiar with Xushian and Xuanmin and only knew that they were extraordinary individuals. Since extraordinary people often had peculiar habits, the Feng family decided to follow Jiang Xining's advice to avoid any misunderstandings. The Feng family household usually retired by 7, but with so many people about, it wasn't until 9 that everyone settled down. The lights in the courtyard's rooms were extinguished one by one, and the soft chatter gradually dropped away, leaving the courtyard in complete silence. When Shushan opened his eyes, it was past 11, and everyone in the residence was deep in sleep. Only faint snoring could be heard. The lamp in the room had burned through most of its oil, and the wick, untouched for a long time, cast a dim light. However, Shushan didn't wake up because of the snores or the dying lamp. He woke up because the talisman on his forehead suddenly felt scorching hot. Having absorbed one of his bones, Shushan had already been feeling feverish. Somehow, the talisman on his forehead was even hotter, to the point where it felt like it was on fire. He hissed softly, frowning, and looked over at Xuanmin. "Bald donkey." No response. "Bald donkey, take this damn talisman off. It's the middle of the night, and I'm not going to cause trouble," Shushan said. And let me mark down the 2 donkeys. All right, so we're at 73. I think we will definitely reach 75. I think we will definitely reach 75 tonight. The burning sensation on his forehead continued. There was still no response. He could tell that something was wrong. "Hey, bald donkey!" Finally, he changed his approach. "Xuanmin! Stop pretending to be dead. I know you're not asleep." 74. He stared at the meditating figure in the dim light, but after a while, Xuanmin still showed no sign of movement. "Are you okay?" Before Shushan could finish, the scorching hot talisman on his forehead loosened and floated down to land on the floor in front of him. Once the talisman fell, Shushan could move again. Without hesitation, he maneuvered his wheelchair to the bedside and reached out to touch Xuanmin's hand where it rested on his knee. He touched Xuanmin's fingers and was startled by their heat. Of course, the talisman was made Xuanmin's hand where it rested on his knee. He touched Xuanmin's fingers and was startled by their heat. Of course, the talisman was made by Xuanmin, so any abnormality with it was connected to him. "Hey, bald donkey!" And we reached 75. Shushan checked Xuanmin's pulse and found it rapid and heavy. An inexplicable sense of unease washed over Shushan. Could it be the mole acting up again? Since Shushan had witnessed Xuanmin's strange episodes, he wanted to check the small mole on the monk's neck. However, the room was too dim for him to see the mole clearly. Reluctantly, he leaned in closer. The mole itself didn't seem to have any blood vessels spreading from it, but something was still off. Xuanmin's body temperature was extremely high. The heat radiating from Xuanmin's neck warmed Shushan as he leaned in close. The slight dampness radiating from Xuanmin's skin made Shushan even more feverish. The heat rushed to his head, leaving him feeling strangely lightheaded. His gaze shifted lazily from the mole on Xuanmin's neck to staring at Xuanmin's profile. Perhaps the heat was making him sluggish, as his eyes became unfocused. He wasn't sure if he was looking at Xuanmin's eyebrows, the bridge of his nose, or... In any case, a high monk was still a high monk. Even with his body burning up, Xuanmin showed no signs of distress. His expression remained unchanged, exactly as it had been when he closed his eyes in the evening. If not for his rapid pulse and the heat emanating from him, Shushan might have been fooled by his calm demeanor. Perhaps influenced by the heat from Shushian's body, or perhaps something else, Xuanmin's pulse grew heavier. The damp heat from his neck became more pronounced. Shushian watched Xuanmin's closed eyes, and for some inexplicable reason, he didn't feel like moving. The heat fogged his mind, and his fingers, which were resting on Xuanmin's wrist, twitched. Xuanmin's heavy pulse jumped in response, and he half opened his eyes and looked at Shushian. For a moment, their breaths were almost intertwined, creating a phantom of intimacy. Xuanmin's half-lidded eyes blended with the dim light of the room, making it impossible to tell where his gaze was focused. Whether it was on Shushian's confused eyes, his damp nose, or somewhere lower. It was as if a heavy, invisible barrier had fallen around them. It blocked out all external noise and left only the sound of their heavy, entangled breaths filling the space. It was a disorientating illusion, as if the entire room had become cramped and narrow. It felt impossible to look or move, to move or look away. Xuanmin's wrist suddenly moved under Shushian's hand. He turned his hand over and gripped Shushian's fingers tightly, pressing them down firmly. Whether it was due to his body's reaction or a loss of control, his grip was unusually strong. It was only then, in his dazed state, that Shushian processed that the dampness on Xuanmin's body was sweat. His neck, shoulders, arms, and even his palms were clammy. As Xuanmin twisted his wrist and bent each joint, his slippery fingers slid between Shushian's. When he clenched his hand, the skin between their fingers rubbed together. The phantom of intimacy grew stronger, like a ghost in the dark. Xuanmin's half-dreaming eyes closed, then opened again. A drop of warm sweat fell from his chin, or perhaps somewhere else, and landed on the tip of Shushian's. It slid down the dragon's neck and disappeared into the collar of his robes. Oh my. Shushian's breath hitched, and his mind jolted awake. Outside the courtyard, in the streets, a cat let out a long, drawn-out cry. In the night, it was startlingly loud, as if the cat were perched right beside the bed. Xuanmin seemed to be fully awakened by the cat's cry. His fingers tightened, and he closed his eyes again. Oh! Oh, boy! Oh, boy! We eating good tonight! Hello, sailor! Look at that! He's got the horny grip! You can see his veins bulging! Oh my goodness! Oh, it means I did a good job, Annika. Like, look at their expressions. Shushian's eyelids twitched, and his fingers, still in Xuanmin's grip, twitched as well. Right? Woo! All those contours? He abruptly sat up straight. Just as he was about to pull his hand back and roll his wheelchair away, Xuanmin straightened up too. His eyes remained closed, his expression unchanged, but his grip on Shushian's hand slackened. After a long stillness, Xuanmin opened his eyes and gazed at Shushian beside him. Move further away. His tone was unruffled, but his voice was a notch lower than usual and a little hoarse. Xuanmin almost looks mad, and Shushian is in for it. Oh, yeah. Shushian had already moved aside, but his heartbeat and pulse that he had suppressed earlier now seemed to have found an outlet. His blood pounded like a newborn calf's. The sound of his heartbeat thundered in his ears so loud that he didn't catch Xuanmin's last word. Huh? Shushian's emotions hadn't quite recovered from the earlier phantom, and his voice came out a little nasal, docile, and relaxed. Xuanmin paused. Nothing. Shushian's pulse gradually returned to normal, and he let out a light sigh. However, the joints of his right hand, which had been squeezed numb, wouldn't let him forget what had just happened. As he flexed his fingers, he silently maneuvered his wheelchair to the table and turned his back to Xuanmin. Under the pretense of adjusting the lamp wick, he pressed down on the discomfort in his chest. After a few adjustments, the lamp's small flame grew longer, and the room brightened. Shushian turned his chair around. In the glowing light, he finally got a clear look at Xuanmin's state. His thin acolyte robes were soaked with sweat, which left the contours of his shoulders and arms faintly visible through the damp fabric. No matter what kind of thoughts this might have stirred earlier, now that Shushian was calm, it didn't look particularly comfortable to him. I bet his finger is not the only one that twitched, right, Ruby? Exactly, especially with the line, no matter what kind of thoughts this might have stirred earlier, now that Shushian was calm, it didn't look particularly comfortable to him. What thoughts were you having, Shushian? Should I get you some water to clean up? Given Xuanmin's intolerance for any kind of filth, he must have been extremely uncomfortable in all that moisture. I mean, being icky sticky from sweat is gross. However, Shushian had forgotten about other things, like the fact that cleaning up would require undressing, and Xuanmin wasn't the only one in the room. As soon as Shushian asked the question, he remembered and wished he could take his words back. Xuanmin, still meditating, remained silent. He opened his eyes, glanced at Shushian, then closed them again. No need. Just move further away. How much do you dislike me? Any further and How much do you dislike me? Any further and I'll be out of the room, Shushian retorted. Without opening his eyes, Xuanmin waited until Shushian had moved back to the ostensibly spiritually abundant wall. To hand it to Xuanmin, dude's got iron self-control. That's not it, he said in a deep voice. This vague statement left Shushian wondering what Xuanmin could mean. From where Shushian was sitting, he could see Xuanmin's profile at the edge of the bed, though most of it was obscured by the bed curtains. However, this partial concealment happened to ease their earlier awkwardness. Shushian dropped his guard completely. It had been awkward because, for just a second, Shushian had felt a certain physical reaction. Of course, he had stopped it before it could progress, but the fact remained. He wondered if Xuanmin had experienced the same thing. As you said, but his finger was not the only one that twitched. You got it in one, Ruby. Shushian rested his elbow on the armrest of the wheelchair, which was just the right height, and propped up his head with his hand as he leaned idly to the side. His other hand toyed with the string of copper coins, while his thumb rubbed the edge of the coins in a leisurely rhythm. Eventually, his gaze wandered from the flickering oil lamp to Xuanmin's figure. If Xuanmin had experienced a similar reaction, it should have been obvious, given how drenched he was in sweat. But his extremely reserved, disciplined, and icy demeanor made it hard to imagine him with worldly desires. Moreover, he was sitting cross-legged in meditation with the front of his monastic robes draped over his knees, making it impossible to see anything. What had this react? Why had this? What had this react? Why had this reaction happened so suddenly anyway? The night was too quiet, and time moved at a snail's pace. While Shushan pondered this, he remembered the wound on the monk's hand that he had licked twice. There was also whatever Jiang Shining had been about to say before Xuanmin cut him off. Shushan understood now why Jiang Shining had warned him not to misuse dragon saliva, but the reminder had come a tad late. He dryly chuckled to himself, straightened his spine, and put on a serious expression to make himself look less like the instigator. He stopped staring at the unfortunate monk and, feeling guilty, closed his eyes and focused on healing with the copper coins. This night of healing felt different than any before. It might have been because he was recovering It might have been because he had recovered another dragon bone, or because 2 of Xuanmin's copper coins had been unsealed. In the past, Shushan had only felt a faint, warm ache in the area where his bones were missing, and a sense of fullness at the sites of bone breaks, like the bones were about to extend outward. Now, the surging heat in his blood and the bone he'd absorbed found a clear direction. They gathered at the broken bone sites, extending from them and forming a thread. This thread seemed alive. Shushan concentrated his energy, and the thread slowly, bit by bit, grew longer. However, the process was taxing. In just one night, the thread was only at half length, but Shushan felt as if he'd expended half a month's energy. By the time the sky began to lighten and the Feng family members started emerging from their rooms, Shushan had already enlisted the help of Jiang Shining, who didn't need to sleep, to find a restaurant for some food. His sister, who had just finished washing up and was preparing some medicinal concoction for the 3 beggars with rashes, called out to them as they headed toward the back door. Ning, Shu Gonzi, where are you 2 going? We're going to Huai Chui residence, Jiang Xining replied. He was somewhat familiar with the famous restaurants in Qingping County and could guide Shu Xian there. Huai Chui residence? Why are you headed there so early in the morning? Aunt Chen is already preparing breakfast. Shu Xian's thoughts are spiraling. He could get another bone easily. Wink. No truffle. Jiang Xining waved a hand. The wise one here is picky. He doesn't care about breakfast or dinner. He only eats meat. The wise one here is picky. He doesn't care about breakfast or dinner. He only eats meat, and it has to be a proper dish. But at this hour, even if you go to Huai Kuai residence to order meat dishes, you'll have to wait for them to prepare it. Again, the jokes are too easy, right? If it hadn't been for Shushan and Xuanmin, the Fang couple might have still been stuck in one village. They might have even died. So the entire Fang family held a mix of awe and gratitude toward Shushan and Xuanmin. Simply calling them young master felt inadequate, and they certainly couldn't let Shushan go hungry. Aunt Chen happened to come out of the kitchen while Jiang Shijing spoke. The 2 women exchanged a glance, and Aunt Chen clapped her hands. I can make all of the signature dishes from Huai Chui residence. Just tell me what you'd like, Shu Gonzi. I'm quick, and I'll have a table full of dishes ready in no time. Jiang Shijing nodded in agreement. I'll have Xingzi help Aunt Chen in a bit. You didn't get to eat last night, so you must be starving by now. As a guest in someone else's home, Shushan wouldn't be so brazen as to order a whole table of dishes. So for once, he was amiable with his request. I'll trouble you in that case. Just make whatever's convenient as long as there's meat. After all, he didn't eat grass. However, there was something else. He darted his eyes left and right. Could you also prepare some hot water? He asked Aunt Chen and Jiang Shijing. That bald Xuan Min was drenched in sweat last night and needs to clean up. Drenched in sweat? The moment Jiang Shijing and Jiang Xining heard this, their inner physicians kicked in. They continued in near perfect tandem. Any other symptoms? Does he have a headache? Any nausea? Other symptoms. Nope, Shushan replied flatly. With his physique, I doubt he caught a cold or fever. Maybe he went astray during meditation and suffered a chi deviation. The Jiang siblings were flummoxed. A chi deviation sounds much more serious than a headache or fever, wise one. Remembering that extraordinary people often have extraordinary quirks, the Jiang siblings decided it might not be appropriate to pry further. They took Xu Xian's words for it for the time being and sent someone to prepare hot water. Xu Xian still felt unsettled when he thought about the events of the previous night. He would stay outside the room if he could, so he followed Jiang Xining around for a while, then shifted to Aunt Chen until she finally shooed him out of the kitchen. He then peacefully returned to the guest hall to wait for the meal. Jiang Xining, who couldn't resist getting involved with medicine, went with his sister to prepare the medicinal concoction. This left only Feng Cheng, who was reviewing the account books in the guest hall with Shushian. After some thought, Shushian broke in. May I ask you a question? Feng Cheng, the account book in hand, paused. Oh, of course, ask away. I'll answer to the best of my knowledge. Unlike Jiang Xining, Feng Cheng didn't know Shushian's true identity. Thus, he didn't need to worry about saving face when asking this question. Have you heard about dragon saliva? What are its effects, and if used on an ordinary person, are there any harmful consequences? I certainly heard about it, Jiang Chang said with a blink, but I've never encountered it myself. Its effects, they're all just rumors. What do the rumors say? Feng Cheng wasn't much of a storyteller, so his answer was very matter of fact. Well, they say if a woman comes in contact with dragon saliva, she'll become pregnant and give birth. This was quite the mess. There are also some other modern rumors, Feng Cheng continued. They say that in a certain place, someone was fortunate enough to obtain some and sell it for a sky high price, or use it in medicine. Supposedly, besides being incredibly effective for curing diseases and detoxification, it has some other effects, mostly related to nourishing yin, invigorating yang, and enhancing certain pleasures. They say the effect lasts for quite a while, but it's all just rumors. If I could see such a miraculous medicine that heals, cures, and detoxifies in my lifetime, I'll die without regrets. Having dealt with various medicinal ingredients for so long, Feng Chang spoke about these effects with complete seriousness, devoid of any lewd implications. But still, though Shushan had guessed as much the previous night, hearing it spelled out by someone else was another feeling altogether. So without another word, he went to the courtyard and grabbed Jiang Xining. Let's make a deal. How about I switch rooms with you tonight? No, Jiang Xining said. Staying in the same room as the master for one night would be enough to send me to the afterlife. Didn't we agree I'd stay a couple more days to celebrate my sister's birthday? Shushan tried again. All right, fine. Instead of that, just let me stay in your room. I don't take up much space anyway. Shi Tu Zhang would wet the bed if you startled him, Jiang Xining said with a dry laugh. And don't you think Nian Qi would go crazy? Yeah, no, of course it's an aphrodisiac. Why wouldn't it be? Of course. Xu Xian sulked. Jiang Xining felt like he was playing the role of a nanny without being paid, and it was shortening his already non-existent lifespan. I guess that is technically another one for Jiang Xining suffering. Jiang Xining felt like he was playing the role of a nanny without being paid, and it was shortening his already non-existent lifespan. What? Did you upset the master again? I caused him just a little bit of trouble. Xu Xian pinched his thumb and index finger together to indicate a tiny gap. Right, so it's definitely a troublesome and difficult problem, not just a little one, Jiang Xining thought. As the two were talking, the back door of the courtyard opened, and two young men dressed as herb gatherers walked in carrying baskets. They paused when they saw Jiang Xining and Xu Xian, then greeted Aunt Chen, who had just come out of the kitchen with a basin of food. Aunt Chen, good morning. What are you cooking? It smells amazing. We're starving. Where are the young master and mistress? The young master and mistress are busy. Go put away your baskets, wash your hands and faces, and we'll eat soon, Aunt Chen told them. By the way, one of the herb gatherers said as they put down their baskets. I know we were supposed to be back last evening, but we ran into a horse caravan on the road. They cleared the way, so we were delayed by a night. A horse caravan? What horse caravan? An official one, the herb gatherer said, his tone suddenly turning mysterious. You know how the plague in our county was reported to the authorities? The court sent an official horse caravan for a plague-dispelling ritual. They should be entering the county town this morning. Guess who they sent? A ritual. Aunt Chen was startled. You don't mean... The herb gatherer slapped his hand. That's right. They say the caravan is made of those who serve directly under the state preceptor's command. There are too many official titles, and I can't remember them all. But apparently they usually follow the state preceptor. They're probably some of the few who've seen this man's face. Uh-oh. And that is where we end for this week. Not a bad spot to end it either. Got a little bit of an idea of what the problem's going to be for this next part. But anyway, I will get that poll up and running tonight, and make sure that you guys vote either wanting shorter story, like another short series kind of like this, so like 1 to 3 books, or if we want to do a longer series. We mentioned a lot of like single book stuff this session that people seemed really excited about, but I still want to give everyone a chance to vote on that. I'll probably leave it up for like a week. Well, it'll probably still be there, but like I'll take the results maybe next Thursday, because I feel like that's a decent time to at least get an idea, and then I can get the question up and give it enough time. But yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching, who came here live, and thank you so much, everyone who watched this later. I hope you enjoyed. I'm so glad we only had that one little speed bump or pothole, with the one glitch, but we fixed that, and it was smooth sailing from there. Oh yeah, and Jiang Xining is beginning to understand Xu Xian, and I think things are about to get awkward. Yeah, it should be good. I agree with all of that. But yes, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and to everyone watching later, I hope you have a fantastic day whenever you're watching this. But yeah, have a good night, everyone, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.